Hey, everybody, I'm Alex Cohen.
And I'm Kate Cagle.
And this is the Inside the Issues podcast. Sara Sadhwani is away this week. We are so thrilled to have you with us, Kate, because once again, a whole lot of news going on in this region. A fourth bus has arrived from Texas with a bunch of asylum seekers on board, raising a lot of questions there.
Right. And with our divided country, it seems like people on both sides are playing this to their political advantage.
Indeed they are. Also, you've got the update for us on the sheriffs. A lot of things happening on that front. And last but not least, you were just saying, ladies, order your stuff.
Order your blazers, order your fall clothes.
UPS strikes. SAG-AFTRA strikes. This is the hot labor summer, and it has become a little bit more complicated due to a memo that came out of City Hall. So stay with us. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to start off, though, with this conversation about immigration. And Kate, you know, it's funny because I kind of had to remember, I don't know about you, but time sometimes is a bit of a blur. So I was like, when did all of this actually start? And it's been a long time now. If you have to rewind the tape all the way to April of last year when you got,
wow.
I know, right? Texas Governor Greg Abbott saying, I'm really sick and tired of everything that is coming over, everything and everyone coming over our border. I fundamentally disagree with President Biden's approach to immigration. So I'm going to start sending people to places outside of Texas, right? And a lot of people saw this as kind of a political stunt. And then it actually started happening. And then Ron DeSantis got in on the action. And first it was people in Washington, D.C. and Kamala Harris's house and Martha's Vineyard. I don't know about you, but when this started happening, I'm like, come on, California, sanctuary cities, you're like, when are they going to come here? And I felt like it took a while.
Really? I thought that I was surprised when they sent people to Los Angeles. Because I don't think that's the slam dunk that Governor Abbott thinks it is, because
ooh, burn,
we're
LA.
not really that far from the border. I mean, we are also dealing with the migrant crisis as well here in California. And I'm sure you watched Governor Newsom's interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News. And he said, sanctuary policy is because we also want to see federal immigration reform. And this is our way of dealing with the crisis in a humanitarian way until Congress, the president, everyone in Washington, D.C. can get their act together and actually deal with it. So I think that this has been a win for Democrats to kind of show themselves a foil on this issue that we're going to welcome these folks. We're going to bring them toys, right? We've seen L.A. politicians.
Miguel Santiago.
Right?
That first bus came here and it was like he just magically had hundreds of toys in his back seat ready to deliver to them. Well, you raise a really good point, because I think you're right. First of all, the one thing about the fact that we were late in the game, it gave everybody time. We all knew. I don't think it was a secret to anyone. When that first bus showed up, it was not like, oh my God, they've sent them here, which meant that everyone had a lot of time to really prepare. What are we going to do? Where are we going to bring people? All the rest of that. And there was so much coordination going on. I talked this week to Lindsay Tosolowski, who is one of the attorneys who's been working with immigrants for years, and certainly working with these immigrants who've been bussed in. And she told me now that they've got the scoop from folks in Brownsville, Texas, which is kind of this, you're a Texan, right? Aren't you originally?
I'm from McAllen, Texas.
There you go.
I'm from Brownsville.
Yeah.
This is where I grew up.
Well, you talk to your people there because they've got the scoop, because they're kind of a liberal holdout, much like Austin. They're not like the rest of Texas necessarily. So they've been calling folks in LA being like, yep, another one of these buses is coming, so y'all better get ready. I had the opportunity to talk to Lindsay. She's had the opportunity to talk to the immigrants themselves who've arrived. Let's listen to a little bit of what they had to say.
Every single person, I will say to them, you're welcome here. We're glad to have you here. We're here to help. And in some cases, I've sat with, a mom with her 9-year-old daughter. I remember distinctly when I said that to her, she just had tears rolling down her face. And I could see the relief on her face as she realized that she's welcome here in Los Angeles and that we were here to help. And that was something in this long, long journey that she's had from Venezuela that she hadn't encountered yet.
So when you hear Lindsay saying, and not just Lindsay, the mayor, how many members of the legislature, how many city council members saying, we're here, we're welcoming you, that brings us to the segment we like to do here every week. What's the word? The word is side. sides, right? Like in this immigration debate, as you meant, there are sides. We don't want anybody else coming in here. I don't care what has happened in your past. Don't take away our resources. This is a place for people who've come through the right channels. That's one side. The other side is we welcome you here. If you're coming from a dangerous situation, we want to assist you. You know, diversity, people from all over the world is in our DNA. Yes. And I think, like you said, Kate, this has given everybody an opportunity to be a winner no matter what side you're on, because you're able to really prove your point. This is where you stand.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that just the sheer numbers, too, I don't want to miss out on that. You know, Texas has said they have now moved 25,000 people. That is a huge amount of people that they have moved across the country. And, you know, we don't get to actually talk to these folks ourselves. Even when they come to Los Angeles, they're very protected from the media. And I understand the concern that they don't want them to be political pawns because they've already become that. But it would be interesting. My understanding was the bus that came to LA this week, a lot of people wanted to come to Los Angeles. They did have family here. And I think that that gets missed a lot, too, in covering the crisis, is that a lot of the people who are coming to America do have connections and family here already. And crossing that border, that is a huge part of the journey. But then sometimes they still have much further way to go.
Well, and I think it's interesting because we keep hearing, especially on the left, that these people are being used as political pawns. I think there's absolutely a validity to that. And yet, if I'm escaping from another country, I'm signing up to be a pawn, folks, because, like, look at the treatment that you get. Not to, like, diminish at all those hot, long bus rides. I think one of the buses broke down for a while in Texas. You don't have food. Like, this weather's been, it's not like it's a comfortable journey. But once you're here, unlike so many other thousands of people, you've got all the, like, how many people have the mayor showing up being like, hey, I'm here to welcome you to the city of LA, and all these, like, legal aids. There was a shelter. Most of these people did almost immediately go to friends and family. I think there was about 15 of them for whom they've set up a shelter because of all the attention on them, because of the stance that LA has taken. The people who come in on these buses will probably have a much greater chance at success in this country than anybody else, which is probably not what Greg Abbott wanted necessarily, but that's a byproduct of it. What I am curious about is how many more buses, right? Because they're starting to come in faster and faster and faster now. And Greg Abbott has said, I am not going to stop until Biden stops. And I don't think Biden's going to say, like, oh, buses, oh no, let's get tougher about the border. I also wonder, too, because, yes, this is like deep blue California. And yes, LA and the city council recently voted to even up our status of being a sanctuary city. But that doesn't mean everybody wants necessarily thousands of people bust here, you know? And I wonder for folks who might politically align with the Greg Abbotts and the Ron DeSantises of the world, but they actually live in the places where these folks are showing up, I wonder how they feel about it.
Look, and the folks in Brownsville, Texas are legitimately overwhelmed. You know, the charity infrastructure in those border towns, they are not set up for the degree of the crisis that we're seeing. And I think that everything you're speaking to also points to, I don't think enough people talk about the difference when Governor Ron DeSantis did it, because that was the state of Florida flying migrants from Texas to California. And that was a fundamental difference, because you're no longer saying, like, hey, this is my state, these are my cities that can't grapple with all of this. All of a sudden now you're so clearly seizing on the politics of this to try to get in on what you think is the next big thing so you can get coverage. And then it's like, you know, that's when even you saw that local Texas official saying, like, whoa, no way.
Yeah.
You know, so it's been interesting, you're right, to see how it has all played out and continues to play out. And I think you're right. I mean, just the sheer volume of need, I would say everyday Americans, every major American city, small town is seeing. I mean, we are just dealing with this multitude of crises, the homeless crisis, the migrant crisis, unemployment, hot labor summer. I mean, you just really see everyone, it just feels like they're stretched thin at the moment.
Yes. You mentioned hot labor summer. That is our next topic for this week. So many strikes, hard to keep count of them all, but some really interesting things that are surfacing out of that. Gosh, where do we even start? Should we start with the trees? I kind of like the trees
The tree
story.
controversy?
The tree controversy. So in case you missed it, on social media, there were these pictures of these trees right by the Universal lot that had been trimmed pretty much down to the core, like not a leaf left. And some folks noted, hey, these were the same trees that had been providing shade for the demonstrators. It seems a little conspicuous that suddenly all the shade would disappear, and allegations that maybe the studio had ordered the trees trimmed so that it would make it even more uncomfortable for demonstrators.
When it's 90 degrees in parts of LA.
Yes. And then Kenneth Mejia chimed in, the city controller's office, saying, actually, we looked, there was no permit pulled to actually trim these trees, because that is something that you got to do. So some fascinating stuff there that I'm sure we'll see.
Councilmember Nithya Raman's office also tweeted about it, saying that they investigated the tree trimming. I don't want to call this gate because I feel like we use gate too much. But
Arbor Gate.
Right. Arbor Gate. Oh, very clever.
Oh, well, I
like
tried.
that. Hey. So it was just, I'm sure it's not over, right? Because then the question is, well, if the trees were illegally trimmed, what happens next?
Who knows? Well, but maybe
Code
that would
enforcement.
be something that would be handled by the city attorney's office. Speaking of which, and Nithya Raman, who we've seen now, remember when she got the plastic ties and she and Hugo Soto Martinez camped out with the hotel workers showing support for them, and they got arrested briefly. City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto apparently sent a memo. We know this because Councilmember Kevin De Leon raised some questions about it, and it would seem maybe shared it with the LA Times. Kevin, you're free to share memos with us as well anytime that you like, just putting it out there. And basically, the city attorney is cautioning elected officials not to get involved in protests, not to take sides. Her reasoning there being that maybe this could be something that would come back in the city in a legal way. And I don't know about you, like, Kate, what did you, because when I first read that, I was like, ooh, that seems kind of weird, because don't we elect officials based on their opinions, the sides that they want to take in disputes? Yet again, like, as journalists, we're told we can't go out to protest regardless of what we feel like, because you would want the public to believe that you're going to take all sides into consideration. I had mixed feelings at first.
I just thought it was so outlandish because LA is such a labor town. And you look at the makeup of the council, Councilmember Hugo Soto Martinez, he's a Unite Here Local 11 guy.
Yes,
there is
for
no
years.
question whether or not he has ties to the hotel workers union. That's what got him into politics in the first place. And Councilmember Nithya Raman, she's very open about the fact that her husband is a member of the WGA. Yeah. And both of their staff members or staffs are consistent of Hollywood people. Hollywood is also very involved in local politics. So just the idea that there would be any kind of distinction between our local officials and a dispute between labor and their employer, when, that's what this town is all about.
Yeah. So, and I think part of it, too, is maybe have to have council members recuse themselves for votes on issues that they were seen protesting on, which I could see as journalists, right? Like if we, have a certain stake in something, maybe we shouldn't be reporting on it or at least disclosing that. But this is not a conflict of interest like taking money, right? You could see where that with development deals, that looks like a real conflict. But again, you're Hugo Soto Martinez, you campaign on the fact that you worked with Unite Here for however many years. You kind of know that's where the dude is going to vote. And voters chose to have him be the guy in office. I guess the other reason why Heidi Feldstein Soto brought this up was because of a case that happened a while ago with conflicts over transportation. But really interesting to note, shortly after the LA Times broke the story about the memo, Dean Erwin Chemerinsky of UC Berkeley's law school was like, nope, Heidi, you've got this all wrong. This is not what the law, just basically shot the whole notion down completely and said, absolutely, politicians should be able to protest.
The initial article quoted former city attorney Carmen Trutanich, who said that he never would have given that advice. And, look, I would love to talk to the current city attorney about this. We're
here for you, Heidi.
We reached out to her and were told by her team, thank you so much for the invitation. We will circle back with you in late summer, early fall, which was a very polite way of saying no. So we would love to hear more from the city attorney about this is not the this is just the latest controversial opinion that she's had. Some people have raised questions about how she feels about the First Amendment, seeing as how apparently she's lobbying for some transparency laws to be rolled back. You know, she went after a journalist trying to re-obtain records that the city had given to the journalist. So she's been facing a lot of questions. And unlike city attorneys that we've had in the past who've been extremely accessible, she's not been accessible at all.
Yeah. Speaking of transparency, some sheriff stuff that's been going on. Kate, this is your beat. Bring us up to speed again. Almost where do you begin?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Where do you start? I mean, this has really been watching the new sheriff, Robert Luna, to see how he deals with multiple scandals, and particularly the latest ones happening in the Antelope Valley. One involved a use of force on an elderly woman who was filming sheriffs as they said, investigating a suspect in a robbery. And then the other incident was just, I don't know if you watched this video, it was heart-wrenching to watch, but a car had been pulled over in the middle of the night. This apparently happened a year ago. They found some moms who were riding in the car with their babies who weren't in car seats, and the sheriffs were trying to take the children away from the mothers. And a deputy ended up punching one of the mothers in the face. And Luna said that he released the video in the interest of transparency. We now know that both of these incidents are under investigation by the feds, although I will tell you, as someone who's covered this department for years, that doesn't necessarily mean that we will hear anything more about these cases, because I can tell you right now, the state attorney general is investigating the sheriff's department, as they have been since at least 2020, and we have not gotten any kind of update on what they're finding. So, you know, Luna is trying to show he's at least handling these situations different. But I think that the behavior that we're seeing from deputies is still concerning to the public for a lot of the same reasons.
Yeah, and sides there too, you know, which I did watch that video because I will be talking to former Sheriff Alex Villanueva, under whose watch all this happened, later on this week. And I really wanted to make sure, okay, well, what was the perspective of the deputies that stopped this car? I guess it was driving in erratic patterns. There were 3 moms, as you mentioned, in the backseat with their babies. And the concern was, and look, this is the law. If you take the side of the law, like, kids have to be in car seats. And there is a real safety reason for that, right? Especially if someone's driving erratically, if they got hit or they hit someone, what might happen to their babies? I could see where the deputies feel like they're very much trying to save lives. And yet, mother to mother, Kate, I mean, it was very hard for me to watch that tape, because you see a mother in the same way any mother with a baby in their arms. It's late at night. And the notion that deputies are going to take your baby away, and you know that once that baby goes away, it will be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for you to get that baby back. I mean, I can literally feel my adrenaline coursing as I even talk about it, and it's not my baby. I think that's just that is the side that you have as a mother. They didn't have access to the car seats. One of the moms said, like, you know, what do you want us to do, right? Like, walk through the desert here in the middle of our night? Like, our perspective is we're keeping our baby safe the best that we can, and that's tough.
Well, and the truth is that, you know, if that deputy had not punched one of the mothers, we never would have even be talking about this incident, because it would have been a case of the deputies following the law.
Yep.
But, you know, Luna himself felt like it crossed the line. It was interesting because apparently there's multiple body cam video. They only released a small clip that kind of obscures what happened. So there's questions on why did they choose that particular video that they released instead of just putting it all out there. And there's been a lot of critique on law enforcement departments across the board and how they release body cam video. It's heavily edited. You only get to see essentially what they want you to see. So they get to say they're being transparent while you don't get exactly the whole story. And then you got the flip side, right? The former Sheriff Alex Villanueva saying that this was also selectively edited in a way to make the deputies look bad, because that was always Villanueva's stance, was that he was going to protect his deputies at the end of the day and not embarrass them by releasing clips like this.
And finally, the tape that cannot be edited. One thing happened, and one thing alone. That is the LA Department of Parks and Rec kicked kicked butt at the recent Echo Park Lotus Festival dragon boat races. I have to say, Kate, I think this might be one of my favorite political stories of 2023 so far. Just because it is like nobody died, nothing is awful. It's just some good old-fashioned competition in politics, which I think, is a good thing. So to set the stage, it was last weekend, the Echo Park's annual Lotus Festival. There's some dragon boat races across the lake. Different members and departments of city and city hall, they compete against each other. And it sounds like it got pretty intense. LA Departments of Park and Rec won. LA DOT came in second. Mayor Bass's team came in third. And man, oh man, there was a whole lot of trash talking, was there not?
I loved it. If you love city politics, I'm sure you follow Johnny Peltz of Knock LA on Twitter, who was giving us the play-by-play on the dragon boat racing. He's the one who finally released the times of just how everyone did. And, there had been a lot of, you're right, trash talking, but also lead up, particularly from the city controller's team. If you follow Kenneth Mejia's personal account now on Instagram, you see a lot of workout videos.
He's swole. The man is swole.
Yeah.
He talks about it a lot. A lot of, we've seen pics of the pecs, shall we say.
And they were out there training together that they were going to win. And so I asked Johnny Peltz, would you call this a major upset? And he said, well, Kenneth Mejia's team really emphasized working out, but not enough on technique. And he said that was their fatal mistake, that rowing is all about synchronization. So there you go. Cuts deep.
Yeah, communication as a team, any team in City Hall in life, you got to work together. That's what gets you across the lake in Echo Park. Fantastic stuff. We will have a link to a video that Johnny tweeted out of that event if you want to see it for yourself. Seeing is believing. Dragon boat races this week. Who knows what next week will bring, but we do hope you tune in for that. My thanks to you again, Kate, for dropping by this week. That is, and speaking of social media channels, Kate, you are all over the place. You are at
Kate Cagle on Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. If you can find me on one of those.
Of course, you can find her on all of those and Insta. I'm not on Blue Sky yet. After a while, I reach my limit, but I am at Alex Cohen in LA and all the other places. We will see you here next week. The Inside the Issues podcast is a Spectrum News One production. Hannah Kokish is our producer. Nathaniel Leathers is our editor. The executive in charge of production is Jeff Shore.